Everybody, welcome to the Town of Monroe, ZBA, night of August 24th, 2020.
Here.
Here.
Scully.
Here.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, I understand Marcy is not with us.
She will not.
Have a quorum. So with that, just, for your information, fire exits out to the patio, or you could leave through the front door where we came in. We have a short agenda to items on the Synagogue. Okay, George. Well, I can't see it from here. So the third project is a new project, and that's the Michael Adams application for variances. So without any further ado, let's get started with the DG Realty Subdivision. And who's here tonight representing?
Good evening, everyone. John Queenan from Lankin Tully Engineering, engineer for the applicant. We're back before you again. We were here last month to review several area variances in association with the proposed cluster subdivision plan for DG Realty. It's a 9-lot, 15-unit subdivision plan located in the Scunny Monk Road, Orico Terrace location. From the last meeting, we provided a small narrative in my cover letter as to the summary of the area variances requested. We provided you with the latest subdivision plans that have been progressing through the planning board, and we also provided you with the conventional layout plan that the planning board used to establish the unit count. So that's where we last ended.
The one other item that we did ask you for that doesn't seem to be here is a kind of a red line markup of the areas where you're asking for the easements. So why don't we start with that, and maybe you talk us through those areas where the easements are.
Okay.
And just to review that. And is there any particular map I should be sharing with everybody?
You want to talk about the existing easements or the proposed open space ones?
The proposed easement.
Okay. So if you have the plan set, it would be sheet 1. You can just stick on sheet 1. This one will work, or the one before it has a little less line work on it. However you want to do it. So essentially, what you see before you is the extension of a cul-de-sac road that's down the center of the property. We have 9 lots that circle around that, starting with lot 1 over on the right-hand corner, circumventing around to lot 9, which is right there on the opposite corner. It's a mix of 1 single-family and 2-family dwellings, totaling 15 units. What you see shaded around the perimeter of the property are the proposed open space areas. There's the main one to the left at the end of the cul-de-sac, and then there's a smaller one to the right, a triangular portion behind lot number 1 there. The rest of the property that you see in the north, above those lots, Mr. Chairman, and then that's all easement area. So that is part of the property. but it's Orange and Rockland easement area that extends length of the property. It's approximately 150 feet wide. And then there's another smaller Orange and Rockland easement along the boundary there that extends up, I believe that's a 20-foot wide easement.
That's their access way.
They call it an access and construction easement, but they don't actually use that for access. They come through Scunnamunk. They come up from this side. It's better seen on I think the overall map on the prior sheet, but they have like a dirt path that meanders up on the other side. Yeah. So they're coming up from the right. So essentially the way it breaks down is that the first variance we're requesting is under the cluster subdivision provisions, you're required to provide 50% open space of the gross area of the property. The gross area of the property is 9.5 acres. So we would be required to provide 4.75 acres of the property in a cluster. We are proposing 1.65 acres. Now, it does seem substantial from the point of pure acreage. But how we got here was that we did a conventional layout with the planning board, and it was determined by the planning board that the property could yield 15 lots. So that's one of the plans that we've included. That was accepted by the planning board, and that was basically a single-family lot layout within the SR10 zoning district. The town zoning regulations then require the planning board is required to evaluate a cluster subdivision. So we do the conventional layout. We go through certain aspects of proving that it's feasible. Planning board accepted that, determined the number of units. Then the code requires that the planning board evaluate a cluster layout, okay? So once we got through this portion with the planning board, we then did numerous iterations of the cluster plan that's before you. This is the conventional. So basically the same layout. It's a longer cul-de-sac, and lots just ultimately wrap around. It's very similar to the cluster, except where the cul-de-sac is in those 3 or 4 lots in that corner, that's where the open space is proposed. So under the cluster plan, everything kind of gets pulled in and cluster.
And one of the lots has a separate entrance, separate private drive or something?
Yes, so there's an access easement out to Scunnamunk in that direction. Orange and Rockland did provide an approval for that driveway. So that lot does get. Yes. Correct.
That's still proposed to exist in the cluster, or
No.
that's, okay.
Yeah. So in terms of the cluster, yes, this driveway is eliminated. All access comes from the cul-de-sac side. So, yes. And that triangle piece where we had that lot, where the driveway went out there, it becomes open space. And what occurs is, once we get to this position with the planning board, the board decides which layout they would like the applicant to pursue. They have chose, at this point in time, the cluster layout. And we did discuss, the variance that would be required. The planning board's feeling is that the cluster layout is a much more environmentally beneficial plan. They feel that it's a much better layout. It pulls everything into the center of the property, leaves open space areas that wouldn't be, provided in the conventional layout, and reduces overall stormwater, impervious surfaces, et cetera. So they asked the applicant to pursue this plan, and that's one of the reasons that we're here, really, for the 2 variances. So the main one is the open space. Now, the open space is interesting. Like I said before, the property is 9.5 acres. So the definition in the code is that the open space has to be the gross, 50% of the gross area of the property. So you're at 4.75 acres. The actual buildable area, which we didn't take credit for the easements in the conventional or the cluster. So those areas of the easements are approximately, just give me 1 second here. I think it's a little over 4 acres, yes. It's 4.1 acres of easement. So if you were to subtract that, see, I think we're getting penalized twice. We did a conventional layout that didn't take into account the easements. And then when we moved to the cluster layout, because the way the code is written on gross acreage, we're getting penalized on having area with easements. So if you were to take the easements out, and you're left with approximately 5.37 acres. So if you take 50% of that, which is the buildable land, including the open space, we would be required to provide 2.69 acres of open space, whereas right now we're providing 1.65. So the percentage is much, much less. And that was what we had gone over with the planning board, is it may look substantial, but in reality, the easements, to me, they're part of the property, but they never existed in terms of any of the layouts that we have done. That conventional layout meets all of the requirements of the SR10 district. It doesn't require any area variances. So once we flip to the cluster plan, because of that gross acreage provision, we're getting penalized for that area, even though it's not used in either scenario. So that's the first variance we'd be seeking, and that's part of the cluster subdivision regulation. We'd be seeking 4.75 acres is required. We're providing the 1.65. Now that's the way that the code is written.
What you're saying, if you were able to count the easement areas, your total would be, you'd be over,
We would be
5.75 by my math?
correct. If we subtracted out the easement areas and just left with the buildable that matched the conventional, we would have 5.36 acres. And then 50% of that would be the 2.69, would be required open space.
Clarify, do the reason, the easements, is it a zoning code that doesn't allow the easements to be used?
That's correct. As part of the lot area, one of the basic descriptions of minimum lot area is that minimum lot area has to exclude any easements on the property, any water bodies, wetlands, steep sloped areas, subtracted out of the gross lot area to equal the net lot area. And under his conventional plan, that's what they did. Each of their lots were over 10,000 square feet in size after they subtracted out all the easements surrounding them.
Correct. And the second caveat to that is the definition of open space is vague in terms of what open space is. It gives a broad definition of what it could be. In discussions with the planning board, they determined that the easement could not be open space. I still feel that it is open space, although it's encumbered by an easement, but that's why we're here. So
I think the spirit of the cluster development was to prevent mass development of certain properties, but that if you wanted to do a cluster, you would have open space.
correct.
And the open space typically was envisioned, I'm guessing, to be wooded property, to be, yeah, like, you know, in
Yeah,
this,
it
this
gives-
is really a clear-cut easement. You know,
True.
it's not really, I mean, in the spirit of the way they wanted the open space to
Correct.
be, so.
Correct.
And I think that's why the planning board fell to the decision that they made, is that whatever it was, the 4.9 acres of easement space on here, industrial easement, O&R has the rights to clear cut that area, which they have already done in the past, just to maintain their lines. So it really doesn't fulfill the open space idea of what that conservation area should be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, those are the conversations we had.
Oh, you know, I'm following your logic also, where you say, okay, once you subtract out all of the easement areas, the 20-foot wide access easement, the 150-foot wide utility line easement, then you're left with 5.6 acres. And if you take half of that, or 5.36 acres, and if you take half of that, you end up with an open space requirement of 2.69 acres.
Correct.
And we're comparing that to what you're providing, which is 1.65, which is an acre shy.
Correct.
And there's a lot of leaps in logic going on here, between what's in the code that says, you need to be half of the grossed area.
Correct.
But even given those concessions, how you just came up with that, Michael, we're still short,
Yes.
right? So even, if you follow, an easement is still an easement. We can look at it and, make assumptions either way, but it's still an easement. Still need to, so if we're gonna go by that, it's still short, which, I'm having an issue with. I'm also having an issue with looking at the first plan, where I think you said the cluster draw it more into the conventional plan. The cluster brought it more into the middle of the property? Is it?
Yes. Yeah, so there's the conventional that basically takes lots out towards the perimeter. And in the cluster plan, the cul-de-sac bulb is pulled in, and that's how we've created that open space area in the back.
But the other impact of the cluster plan versus the yield plan is the yield plan has nice full rear yard requirements along the existing houses in the village of Monroe. So these new houses don't feel like they're just being dropped in the backyard of the other house. When we look at the cluster plan, like this house here in particular, I'm not even sure what lot number that is, but the first one
That's
Fine,
across
right?
the village, right on the left
Yeah,
side,
that's lot
that thing
9.
is really tight to that property.
That's lot 9,
It's-
but I will say that all of the lots still conform to all of the SR10 zoning district regulations.
My point was, I don't see where the cluster plan draws it more inside. Because of what Mike just pointed out there, it's, I see how it changes, but
Yeah, so for instance, if I could just get up. So for instance, in the conventional, if you could just go back, Mr. Chairman. Okay. Could you just go back to the conventional? So in the conventional, if you see this point right here.
Right.
So your cul-de-sac is extending beyond that point, probably by about, I would say, 50 or 60 feet beyond that. And you have lots pretty much around here. Now, if you go back to the cluster, here's that same point. Here's the end of the cul-de-sac, probably
Yeah.
50 or 60. So that's what I mean by it's pulling it in.
yeah, a few of the lots.
Yeah, basically, it
Yeah.
would be all these lots that run
Right.
around here.
That's
Correct.
That's creating the open space.
That's correct. Whereas in the conventional plan, the lots were essentially circling the whole property. And then we eliminated this lot here, and we're going to combine it here, because this had fairly significant amount of trees still remaining here. And that gave a buffer to this house here.
This might be a question for Dave. Is us in considering these variances, is our opinion as to whether or not we consider the optimal development plan to be the conventional versus a cluster, or is that basically the planning board's decision?
No, your job is not to necessarily consider solely which one do you prefer, right? Your job is always, you go back to the Town Law 267B factors governing area variances. There's that balancing test that balances the detriment to the community by the grant of the variance against the benefit to the applicant of the variance is sought. And then you think about those 5 factors in coming up with that balance. So it's lots of the same considerations, but you have certain specific things that you've got to consider that are a little bit different, in character than what the planning board's looking at. But at the end of the day, the boards are both using their discretion. Yours is guided by certain very specific things.
Okay.
For us, the measurement would be
It's not, yeah, it's not red.
Well,
Oh,
maybe pull it a
there we
little
go.
closer to really get there.
Okay, so, as I was saying, what this plan represents is an alternative means of getting to the same ends. So when it comes to that test and measurement of whether or not we should grant a variance or not, this represents an alternative.
Right.
A feasible alternative, so.
Right, because if we don't grant the variance, options for them will eliminate lots in the cluster subdivision to meet
Right.
the open space, or to go back to the planning board with the conventional plan.
If we were to say, okay, give us a plan that yields 2.7 acres of open space, how many of these small lots do you need to dedicate to that? Right, so you need an extra acre, so looking at
Correct,
these
so-
lot sizes, they're, geez, let me see.
They're
I
about between 11 and 15,000, so I would say probably 4 lots, roughly.
That's 4 out of the 9 lots, which,
Correct. And I'd be honest with you, I believe at that point, the applicant would then go back and seek the conventional layout.
'cause again, we're talking about alternatives. How can you get there without us granting such a large variance?
Correct.
So I think we're all clear on the area variance for the open space requirement. Now, if you could go over the lot setbacks
Sure.
that do not comply.
Correct. So there's a second provision that requires that the open space area not include a private yard closer than 75 feet to the principal building. So I was a little confused on this as well, and apparently what it does is lots, I'll just start with lot 1, for instance, the one over in the corner. The rear yard to lot 1 would have to be 75 feet away from the open space area, that way, based on the way that this is written. So we're providing a standard setback in the SR zone of 25 feet, which is that side yard setback. The same would apply to lot 6 and 7, which are on the end of the cul-de-sac. So their rear yards would have to be 75 feet to the open space boundary. We're proposing those at 35, which is the rear yard setback in the SR 10. And then there was a comment at the last meeting about whether lot 8 and the side yard would require that. I think it does, so I added it in my correspondence. I did have some discussions with the planning board attorney. She was unsure, so she ultimately said be on the safe side and add it. So we did add lot 8, and that would go from 75 to 15, which again, the 15 feet is side yard setback in the SR 10.
So, what we're doing here is we're going cluster and then comparing that to the base regulations and sizing it up to see what the differences are. But if the code under the cluster says it's got to be 75 feet, that's the setback. Whether it complies with the,
No, I just wanted
what
to
the
be clear that
setback
it-
is in the SR 10.
No, I just wanted to be clear that it's not, it's an open space
Right, open
setback,
space.
not a building setback to a lot line, that's
Right.
all.
But it's a building setback from an open space.
It's a yard setback.
Okay.
It's a little odd, but it's there. So those are the 4 lots that are affected by that. And then what we did at the planning board level was, lot 1 is to own all of the open space. So that would prevent other lots from intruding into the open space. So essentially, if you buy the lot and you know where your lot lines are, and you don't have like a dashed line that says, oh, don't go beyond this point, but you own it, but don't go beyond it, It was felt that if one lot owned all of it, then people would be more inclined to know where their property boundaries are and not intrude on it. So that was a protection to the 75-foot buffer to it. And the boundary will be demarcated with markers indicating that it's a protected open space, and it'll also be referenced as a deed-restricted covenant within the filing of the map.
Proposed open space, what is it currently?
Right now,
It hasn't been cleared.
it was cleared probably 6 years ago by the original property owner. So right now, it's overgrown meadow, except for the corner piece on the right. That's fairly wooded. I think if you go, Mr. Chairman, if you go to sheet 14, we have a landscaping plan with all of the existing trees have been located on the property.
I know the sheet you're talking about, it's
Yeah.
in the other,
It's on the other, I had to break it apart because
the
of the size.
second
But
half.
basically, this plan will serve fine. All those little circles, for a technical term, are all the existing trees, significant trees on the property. It's larger than 8 inches in diameter. So those have all been located. And then there's a landscaping plan that goes with this that supplements the open space areas. Yeah, it should be the last sheet of this. Yeah. So what we're doing is applicant has retained a landscape architect. He's been working with the town planning board's landscape architect to basically replant those open space areas with significant trees and coverage. I think there's a total of 40 additional trees throughout, plus some evergreens and shrubbery. I think there might be a chart at the bottom. Yeah. $39 regular deciduous trees. And then if you notice in that right-hand corner, in that triangle, there was a significant cluster that would remain because that lot was not part of either this subdivision or the subdivision in the village. So we would retain that wooded area there.
The issues that I'm having a hard time getting past with this cluster subdivision is, what John said, we have to follow benchmarks. So we're open space of 4.7, but they're providing 1.65. 4 out of the 9 lots are in need of variance. And Lot 1 owns the open space,
Well, all of it, yes.
right? And so then we're going to have to rely on that owner of Lot 1 to honor that.
Correct. It would be like, it's very similar to any other open space that's been
Yeah,
set up.
no, I get it.
And the
But
reason-
I'm just putting it out
Yep.
where the issues that I'm having with this,
Correct.
just cut and dry.
The good thing is, if there is a good thing, is that most of the open space is on the other side. So really for Lot 1 to go and clear the other side, it would be pretty, I don't think he would, sorry. I don't think he would go to the other side of the subdivision and clear behind the other lots. He probably won't even remember that he owns it. And this triangle will be demarcated with signage and a boundary. Yeah, so,
Well, I'm noticing here, as I look at the landscape plan, that there's no supplemental trees along this edge of the clearing area.
No, we didn't.
I mean, that's a planning issue for them to discuss, but, you know, it just seems like everything's just right along the edge that wasn't clear-cut before. But there's considerable area in here that was clear-cut that probably should be addressed. That's between you and the planning board and... So, is everybody comfortable now in understanding the easements that they're asking for? Yes. All right, and John has been good enough, I think, to provide us everything we asked him for, with maybe the exception of the red line markup of these easements, or the variances that you're requesting?
Correct. So what I'll do on the next submission, I'll put in red the dimension on those 4 lots.
Yeah, and just show, add a dimension line with an arrow and says this is where it should be.
Correct. Do you want me to do anything with the open space? I mean, essentially, the required open space is pretty much the entire buildable area minus half an acre. So if you wanted some
Let
sort
you
of,
back down to 1 lot.
yeah,
Have a
essentially,
1-lot subdivision.
yeah.
Yeah.
So just to give you a reference, everything that is a lot or is shaded essentially would be the required open space area, except for maybe 1 lot or so.
Oh, you see, that's the difficulty for this applicant. He bought a piece of land that was substantially 60% utilized already, you know, and whatever he paid for it, he probably should have paid for the lesser part of it that remains available to him to develop. You know, so we're looking at this 10-acre piece that is really just less than 6-acre piece that he can develop, and trying to find some common ground where he can, you know, meet his land development goals and not be completely out of sync with the town zoning regulations and the planning requirements.
Don't disagree with you, and looking back, when we did the conventional layout, we didn't take into account the easements, and that's how we ended up at the units. What tripped us up a little bit is that in the code is mandated by the planning board to do the cluster, and the planning board chooses. So it's not the applicant's choice, it was planning board's choice. So that's kind of how we got here.
You know, in other matters, you know, while we're talking about this project, you know, the last time you were here, we were talking about a lot about the connection into this lower subdivision that occurred in the village of Monroe.
Yes.
And I looked into it, that was a filed map in 2020. That map makes no offers of dedication to the village of Monroe for streets, and on the tax map records, all 3 of these parcels are still owned by the developer. So, you know, in my estimation, this is going to be a private road. The other part that I wanted to bring to your attention is that your drainage line that ties into their catch basin system does not exist on their plans. So that first 500-foot of storm drainage line that goes from their catch basin at the entrance to Scunnamunk Street is not on their plan, it's not on your plan.
It should be on our new plan. It should be on this plan, the line
This,
extending down.
your plan?
Yeah, if you go to the grading sheet, that drainage line should be on this plan. I wasn't involved in the village subdivision. I wasn't that
Right,
applicant's
but I'm
engineer,
just
but
letting you know that there
but-
is no line on that plan.
no, there's no line on their plan because their plan was before us. We've added the line.
So the last time we were talking about, well, you should be showing the full profile because you're of that roadway because you're putting in a line. You're putting in a sewer line, you're putting in.
We're not, well, the sewer line is part of their project. They're extending it to almost basically the property line. But in terms of whether the road is going to be public or private, the applicant went through the village planning board meeting minutes. And in those minutes, the village clearly indicates that the road is to be public. It's in here. And they also indicated that this road would be extended in the future for a proposed development being looked at in the town. So that was all in the record. The village knows about that. As for what happens moving forward with the village, I couldn't speculate what will occur. But those meeting minutes, they basically come out and say that. It says,
Here's what I'm talking about here. I'm showing you the utilities plan from that subdivision. The drainage consists of this series of 12 seepage pits located at the entrance to Scunnamunk Street, and only 2 catch basins, one on each side. There are no other pipes leading to it. So your drainage pipe to get to that catch basin has to be designed someplace. As far as the sewer line goes, what they are showing are separate sewer connection lines.
yeah, they have laterals to a main.
Laterals, oh, wait, I'm thinking that's what happens, yes. Individual water lines, there's no water main extension along this subdivision street, but there is a sewer line, you're correct. That does, drainage line does, something that's got to be dealt with during the design process.
Correct. But just back, it says, in the minutes, it says, in addition, this was a Village Planning Board meeting, December 12th, 2018. In addition, county's comment about this road being a private road is completely incorrect. The proposed road will be a public road. It says, December 12th, 2018. Sure.
Filed in
Yeah, that was 2 years during the review process with the village. And then there was also notes in here about, it says, the street is designed as a half circle, for most likely that it will be. The cul-de-sac will go away, and the street will continue into the town for further development. That's why it's a half cul-de-sac, essentially. But that's what's in the minutes, but what the village does in the future, I couldn't speculate on it.
That's important to the outcome of your subdivision ultimately.
It's-
It's
yeah,
not the
it's-
zoning board's issue.
Yeah, it's
But-
huge, but I don't see how you can create that road and not have it be public, because you've now created lots that have no frontage on any public street. But that's not for us to.
That was one of the things I questioned about the yield plan, was that one lot that had long driveway out to Scunnamunk Street.
Yes.
It had zero frontage on any public road.
Correct. At the time, the planning board attorney made a decision that he said that easement served as its frontage, and therefore the lot conformed.
Okay, so I think you helped clear up a lot of the questions we had about this application. You provided us with the drawings we asked for. I would like to get a copy of the village's resolution of subdivision approval for this. And that actually doesn't even really weigh into our determinations. That's just for knowledge so that we know the full.
It doesn't exist. The village at the time did not do resolutions. The map is the resolution, is what the village told the applicant. Because we tried to get all this information also for the planning board. And essentially, the village said there was no formal resolution, the map was signed.
Yeah, but like I'm telling you, there's no statement of offer of dedication on this
Yeah,
map
no,
to
I-
the village for the roadway. Now,
I
you know,
don't-
usually there's a statement on the subdivision
don't-
map itself that
I don't
these
disagree
roads-
with you.
You know, so it seems like an incomplete transaction here.
I did reach out to the village planning board secretary and zoning board secretary. She sent me plans the other day. I didn't even get a chance to open them to see what they were for this project that we were getting to.
Okay.
So I haven't even had a chance, and I can't get into my email right now.
Yeah, no, Mr. Chairman's right. There's nothing on the map that says offer of dedication or nothing to that effect or a note. It's just there. And then if you dig through the minutes, then it comes up that it's going to be public. I know they posted a bond. I know they posted inspection fees, and I know it's been designed to village standards. But beyond that, I don't know.
All right. Well, That's informative background on this application that's before us, but it's not our matter of business. You know, our business really on this application is to examine these 5 variances that they're requesting and make a determination on that. And does anybody?
Lots and
Those 4 lots you're counting, okay. I understand.
and
Mike, I did just get into my email, so I was able to email you what, they were able to email to you.
The masks don't work with the microphones. If you put on the mask, nothing comes out.
I just emailed you the item from the secretary from the Village of Monroe.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other questions, comments, Pete?
No, I'm good.
Chip?
no, not at all.
Kevin? All good? All right, so I think we have enough information to consider this matter for a public hearing at the next meeting.
Okay.
Would anybody care to make a motion to schedule this matter for a public hearing at the next planning board meeting? Will you be here? Oh, ZBA, excuse me. Deal with planning boards for so long, it just sticks.
September 28th is the next ZBA meeting.
Will you be around for that?
I don't have a choice. Yes, I'll be here. Thank you.
Who's making the motion?
Motion to open this to public meeting on September 28th?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried. Thank you, John.
Yep. and I'll get
Appreciate
you-
all the clarifications.
Yeah, not a problem, and I'll get you that revised map with the colors. Okay, thank you. Thanks, good night, everyone.
Okay, so the next item we have on the agenda tonight is the Kingsville Synagogue. And this is a returning matter. Good evening, David.
Hello, everyone. Well, we're back to continue this process with the ZBA. To remind everyone, we're asking for a half-story area variance to this house. The building department has determined that this is a 2.5-story house which complies with the zoning code. The conversion of the attic to habitable space requires that a 3rd story, or this attic be classified as a 3rd story, so we would need a half-story area variance for that to happen. At our last meeting, you had requested floor plans of the 1st and 2nd floor. We were able to do so, and we provided them to you. It did establish the amount of bedrooms on the existing 2nd floor is 4. The area for the 1st floor comes to approximately 2,430 square feet. The 2nd floor is 2,160 square feet, and the conversion of the attic to a 3rd floor would result in approximately 1,467 square feet. We, as I outlined in the cover letter of August 2nd to the board, just in clarification, the owner is requesting this because of his extended family and the care of parents, so that this is not, just to be clear, this is not a rental type of situation or anything like that. This would be used for the immediate family, and it's something that is needed. There's no change in footprint of the building. There's no change in the exterior appearance of the building. Yet, this is just the first step. I mean, if this were to continue, there would have to be changes in, for example, the window sizes in each bedroom in the attic, so that would result in minor changes in the exterior. But the overall appearance, the overall aesthetics of the house would not change and would remain within the character of the neighborhood. We feel it's consistent with the 5 criterion associated with an area variance. Again, since there's no exterior change, it remains within the context of the neighborhood. It doesn't provide any negative impact. It's used for the immediate family, and we are requesting of the board if they would consider this variance.
This has already been built out,
Yes,
and are people living in it?
not at the current time, but it has been built out. The building inspector issued his letter based on that in February 24th of 2020, and he outlined everything that was needed, the variance, what's happening there, and then everything else that would be needed to make this codified if the variance is granted. But it is built out, yes.
It was built out without permit,
Correct, excuse me?
without permits?
Correct.
Mentioned that there need to be a change to some parts of the structure.
Not the structure, but I'll be specific, the windows. So a bedroom, according to the residential building code, needs an egress window. So that's a minimum size of either 5 square feet or 5.7 square feet. The windows up in that area of the house within the attic would need to be modified somewhat to accommodate that specific part of the code. And there are others. I mean, a 3rd story definitely triggers fire-rated construction or a sprinkler system. So there, as the building department notes in their letter. So as this variance would be granted, there's so many other things that would need to be addressed to codify this attic into a 3rd floor. Okay.
You were here in May, I believe, the last time, and we brought up the fire suppression, the 3rd floor, some type of egress, fire escape, or things like that. So I remember bringing that up. And I was an alternate at the time, so I think I was sitting at the kids' table. The questions I had when listening to what was going on there, is there been other variances granted to this property up until this point? And if so, they're granted, has in good faith the owner held up their end of the bargain on those?
We were before the planning board to modify or renovate the existing basement into a place of worship or place of assembly. In so doing, that modified the parking in the front of the building or in front of the house to accommodate the additional parking, and it also qualified the septic system to also include that place of worship. I believe, if I remember correctly, we were before you and were able to avoid any variances by working with this board in modifying the parking so that it avoided any further variance or any variances at all. We took those recommendations, went back to the planning board, presented that parking arrangement to them, and they accepted it, and then a planning board approval for that was secured.
I thought we issued a variance for a front yard setback, or parking in the front yard on that. Although you did take measures to modify the plan and pull as much of that parking out of the front yard, there was still a good portion of the parking lot that was there. I don't recall.
It could be, it's been,
no, I
it's
think
been
we
a
have-
long time.
Yeah, you know, and David, this is one of the problems with this piece of property, is it comes to us in bits and pieces, and I'm sitting here, I'm going through files tonight.
Yes.
I asked you for the second floor plan and the third floor plan to document what's out there. So what I was looking for was the basement floor plan. You know, that way I can have everything all together in one place at one time. And also, you know, as a matter of fact, it would be nice to have the site plan that we granted a variance on. You know, and you know, as Chip was asking, you know, has this applicant followed through with anything that was asked of him by the ZBA and the planning board under the previous application? And in my estimation, no. I mean, I was out there, I did another site visit on this property recently. They haven't done a darn thing to the front yard to address the parking. Nothing has changed. Are they using the basement as a synagogue in the meanwhile? You know, and I don't know that. I mean, you know, the variance was granted probably over a year ago, and if you don't implement the changes that are granted there, then I believe it expires, right? Because it's tied to a site plan.
You know, I don't have an answer to that. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
it was a special,
But
special
they,
use
you
or
know, they're
conditional.
not, the place is as dirty as it always was. Out front, their trash is all over the road. You know, this is about being a good neighbor, not just asking for everything under the sun. This application worries me because it brings us into a whole new realm on variances that we've never dealt with before or approved. I'm afraid of, you know, what precedents we might be setting by turning attic spaces into allowable third-story living spaces, right? I mean, you hear and saying, oh, well, I only need a half a story variance. Well, the half story you have is uninhabitable. By changing the description from half a story to a full story, we're making it a habitable space. You know, so, and tremendously so. I mean, we got, how many bedrooms are upstairs?
Five bedrooms, a kitchenette, which is already inhabitable, right? The work is done. What they would be changing is windows, right? Egress windows. So it's already done, and that's where I'm having a real difficult time. And in the research that I was doing, because I came late to the game and trying to go through all the emails and seeing what was happening and what's been done, that we just keep asking for more variances, or at what point do you just stop and say, can we just get back to even and follow through on the variances that you gave them to get that right before we ask for more?
So this application, what we're dealing with is 4 building stories, right? Because there's the basement that was converted to a synagogue. There's the first floor plan and the second floor plan that's on the drawing that you presented us with tonight. And then there's another drawing floating around in the files out there that is the third floor plan that shows the 5 new bedrooms proposed. And it's just... This is the attic. The attic, right.
Septic tank, enough for the 5 additional bedrooms?
I'm sorry?
The septic tank, is that enough for the 5 additional bedrooms?
No, that's going to have to be modified. The design of the septic system would have to be re-engineered. And, you know, the owner knows that that's something we would have to address at that time. You know, I understand the frustration of the board, and whatever I can do to package this together further for your review, I would have wanted it to do all at once. Of course, that was not available to me at the time, yet here we are. The attic third floor conversion, it's not floating around. It was in our initial package. You know, you have it there as
Right, but
noted.
I'm sitting here during the meeting looking for it. I can't find it. It's in an email someplace, and I get hundreds of emails.
Well, actually...
So that's why I'm fishing around for
Yeah,
it.
no, we have to provide the hard copies. Believe me, if it was electronic, that would be great. I mean, we have to provide 9 hard copies of each submission, so believe me, it gets extensive.
The issue I had with the statement you just made where, I think Kevin asked about the septic, and it's not up to, and he's aware of that, and he'll address it at the appropriate time. I think that's,
Well, there's a sequence of events, so.
yeah, but
if-
but those bedrooms, the 5 bedrooms in the kitchen already exist. So the appropriate time, that's where, right, so by saying that he'll address that at the appropriate time was when he put those 5 bedrooms in the kitchen upstairs.
Well, I'll go one step further. The appropriate time is the approval of the 5 bedrooms.
Well, right,
So-
I was
so,
giving you the benefit of the doubt that we just passed by that step and
So,
just did it.
if we get the approval of the variance, and then we go further for the building permit application, all of that needs to be redesigned, readdressed to comply with the code. I mean, there's no question about it. But right now, we're at a road where we need the variance would have to be addressed, and that would trigger the next sequence of events to get us to a logical state of approval.
Been before us many times, Dave, and you know our frustration with people
Yes.
doing things without getting permits. It's not, now this is a situation where we're being asked to allow a home to be 3 stories when it's not supposed to be, and that story's already been built out, and that was done, I believe it was built out even before you came to us with the front yard parking. So,
I'm not
so-
sure.
yeah, but, and now we're talking about further, modifications that need to be made to the windows, to the septic. And I guess what Mike's frustrated about is he went out and took a look and nothing's even been done, as it relates to the parking in the front yard variance. So I don't know. I mean,
Well, Peter, let me just address those items one at a time. The first one, I mean, New York State realizes the fact that homes are converting their attics to a 3rd story. That's why they made those provisions. They say if you want to do that and create a habitable space, you need to do the following to codify it. So there is, if it was an anomaly or if it was the exception to the rule, it would be addressed that way in the code. It's not. They realize that these things are happening, and if you want to do it, you have to get the proper permission. So, it wouldn't be out of the norm to grant that variance to conversion of an attic to a 3rd floor habitable space.
But there is a procedure
There is
to
a
do that,
procedure.
right? So just to do it the right way. And what I see here in my short time is, a pattern of asking for forgiveness instead of permission at the appropriate time. And at what point does not having the permits and for that 3rd story or the attic space, and I guess the building inspector and the town, everyone's aware of that. What point do our fines start be levied?
Oh, quickly. The process, they triple the amount of the application fee.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. The fines are there. There's no question about it. The town, and rightfully so, receives monies for these inconveniences.
But the fines are not enough to get his attention to work on the parking space. So the fines are not getting his attention.
Oh, I think they're getting his attention.
Well, nothing's being done though.
So, well, that's why I wanted to address Peter's point about the 3rd floor, and then I wanted to address Mike's point about the clearing of the yard and everything. And, the pictures speak for themselves. I have nothing to say in association with that, except that I need to go back to them and tell them that this process needs to be started. The zoning board has made themselves clear about it.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern is Mike mentions is, setting precedents. It's a big part of our job is interpreting the zoning code to not specifically create a precedent that is not necessarily a need, I'm not saying not needed, but, we've made decisions in the past that have set some sort of a precedent that gave, alleviated an issue with a particular, applicant. In this case, it's setting a precedent that is basically saying to anybody, yeah, you want to make a second floor, third floor? Do it. It's already been approved by the, by the zoning board. So that's, setting precedent's always been an issue with me.
Not somebody who built a shed out of ignorance, not knowing they couldn't do it. This is a third floor of a house. And they had to install stairs, I'm assuming.
Yes.
I mean, this was major, major work.
So, I mean, to address the precedent, every project is unique. I mean, if you have an attic that only has a headroom of 5 feet, you can't convert it, period. There's other criterion. So
And this one is just riddled with uniqueness. It was before us for a variance for the synagogue in the basement. Meanwhile, the third floor was converted to habitable space. None of that was known to us during that application. We come back 2 years later, and now they want to convert. They're being forced to ask for a variance because the building inspector will not rightfully give them a CO on a illegally built third-story living quarters, and we're changing a house here that was, originally a four-bedroom house to a 9-bedroom house. You're going to need a major renovation of your wastewater disposal system. There's got to be a whole design on that. That might even push you up to a daily flow rate that's going to require Orange County Health Department approval. It's. If they needed the extra bedroom space so badly, why didn't they just put it in the basement and forego the synagogue? It gets to the point where it's one ask after another, after another, after another, and they don't show good faith here in terms of cleaning up the street. I mean, this is just, it's, the inside of the fence line is nice and clean where they live, but they throw all their garbage out into the right-of-way at the cul-de-sac, and they have a big dumpster in front of their place. So, they seem to do what they want on this piece of property and not what they need to do in order to stay in compliance. So,
I just want to be clear, the parking was not done. The variance that we gave for the parking, that was never completed?
no, none of the outside construction was done. So I don't even know, if the inside construction was done, because you can't see
Obviously,
that.
the dumpster wall was not.
Right, the dumpster was supposed to go in the dumpster enclosure behind the fence. That hasn't happened, because this is what you end up with, is you end up with trash all over the public road.
Just as a reminder where we are procedurally, keep in mind, we have not yet put it on for a public hearing, so the public hearing hasn't been opened.
And I was just looking back, and yes, we did issue a variance on this property on the former application.
Do these variances, do these variances expire?
The answer is, the variances do expire. I'd have to look at the code provisions. I haven't looked at it recently to refresh my
grant-
memory as to the expiration
When
provisions.
did we grant this one, Mike?
There's usually language at the end of every resolution that quotes the expiration language.
I'm looking at a file that's dated August 13, 20.
I think there's usually like, that, I can't see from here, but that fine print at the end, but before the signature. Yeah, right in there. Does that have the language in it?
Associated, the variance is not completed by the recipient of the variance, and the certificate of occupancy issued by the appropriate.
I know the building, the planning boards, I think.
His first.
I also remember in May, someone questioning the structure of the attic and the existing attic, and if it was suitable, if it was engineered correctly. Well,
Live loads that would be on
right, right.
there. And that, falls into the building department's area of practice. They have to make sure that the architectural plans that are submitted are, signed and stamped, that it's structurally sound. And that's for David to provide to him. Here again, we're just looking at the variance that's being requested. And, in certain ways, yeah, the building will still look the same from the outside with the exception of larger windows. But, we're doubling the occupancy on the building. We have no idea what kind of an impact that's going to have on the septic system on the lot, whether, how big that's going to need to be, whether there's room on the lot, or the slopes are mild enough to facilitate a new septic system.
And I don't necessarily think that it'll look the same from the outside, because when push comes to shove and you're at a third floor, there's got to be there's got to be a way to get out of there. There's got to be a fire escape. There's got to be something, so that's going to change the appearance.
Both, a fire escape and.
Yeah, I think so.
Right, and this is on a well. this lot.
Yes.
So,
Say no?
No?
I-
Questioning it.
we have kicked this matter around a bit here today. David has provided us with the two drawings we asked him for, but I think the only other ask that I have, David, is that you provide us with a complete set in one PDF file so that we're not searching around during a public meeting trying to, show what's going on throughout the full scope of the house. Questions for Dave?
No.
Other requests for information?
No.
You know, what goes on inside that house is a mystery to us. We don't know if it's being used as a synagogue now. We don't know if the upstairs is being occupied already. You know, so that bothers me in the way that we just don't know. You know, if they are utilizing the place as a synagogue now and they haven't done all the improvements that were required under that site plan, it's, you know, it's just another violation. Just laughing at the rules and doing what they please.
The issues that I have, to piggyback on what the chairman said, is you don't know what's going on in there. And by his actions, if you go ahead and grant this variance, his actions have said in the past, will he do the improvements or follow through like he hasn't done to this point? Right? That needs to be communicated to the owner. That the actions he's not taking, it's very loud.
George? Okay. Your microphone's not lighting up either.
You're getting close. Yeah, so I think you got to get really close.
Oh, she was pretty close.
What about now?
Gotcha.
It looks like the other one on the table is not working.
What garage sale did Tony buy these microphones from? We'll have to ask the supervisor. Thank you, George.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How to change it?
Somebody must.
George will have to walk Kevin through it, installing the batteries. Yeah.
Matt? I have two, one on each side. What the heck? Okay. Batteries. Start. Sorry, we needed to.
Went through this last night, Dave. Batteries on my,
All right, he got it now. It wouldn't lock. I think we're on track now. Maybe.
Hello? Hello?
Now?
Yeah, gotcha.
And at our office, we also provide,
TV service.
just for everybody watching, right?
Services.
Okay.
Well, I've heard the board, loud and clear, and of course, we'll convey everything that's of concern to the board and also for the neighborhood and for the promises that have been met. So I'll make sure that that happens. And we will, of course, put together one complete set of everything from beginning to end so that you have all the plans that have been approved and what's associated with this application all within one file.
David, a question for you on the, David?
Oh, I'm sorry, I think you were talking to David. Wrong David. Yes.
You could have been answering
On
all
the
these questions
question of the letter from the applicant, should that be a sworn affidavit? To add another David to the mix.
I mean, look, if you can get a sworn affidavit, that's great. Does it have to be? No, I mean, you routinely accept, letters into the record. So, I mean, if you have, it's in your discretion. If you want to require an affidavit, you're certainly within your discretion to do that.
I think I would feel more comfortable with that. The applicant hasn't appeared, at any of these meetings, and, we're counting on his testimony for this, this next meeting, which may be a public hearing. I would rather see that as a sworn affidavit.
And that's acceptable.
Okay, so now I know you have all the plans and they exist, so that's just a matter of compiling them.
Correct.
The affidavit, I don't know how quickly you could get that done, because the reason I ask is, our deadline is, right, so basically 10 days from now. I hate to schedule public meetings subject to done that before and we've gotten burned. The plans I'm not concerned about. I think you can get the plans done. That's a given. Without the sworn affidavit, and that puts us in the position where we can't schedule a public meeting unless we know we're going to have that document in hand.
Well, keep in mind, you could always schedule the public hearing, open the public hearing, and not close it until you get it.
Okay, fair enough.
That way the applicant's moving along, you're moving along generally, and it can come in. If it doesn't come in,
Keep the meeting open.
yeah.
Or the other way could be bring them to the meeting, bring them to the public meeting, to his property. If he can't stand and talk about how his property's being utilized, then yes, I do want that sworn affidavit to that regard. Okay, so with all that, is the board comfortable with considering this for a public hearing next month?
Yes.
Would anybody care to?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to open a public hearing regarding this application.
To set the public hearing.
Set the public hearing for September 28th.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So carried.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night, David.
Aye. Done new business first.
Well, that brings us up to the next item on the agenda, new projects. It's the variance request by Michael Adams.
Good evening. My name is Joe McKay. M-C-K-A-Y, from the law firm of Catania, Mann and Ryder in Newburgh, New York. We're representing Michael Abrams on his application this evening. Michael's here at the table with me, and let the record reflect his wife is also here observing. There are 3 variances for this property. The proposal is to construct a pavilion and a shed. It's a prefabricated shed that will sit on a pad. My client made the application to the building inspector. Mr. Maldonado denied the application for the shed and for the pavilion, stating that the code required certain setbacks. So specifically, because this property, I know you hear this all the time, you hear that the property is unique, but let me say this. This property is located on Route 208. It adjoins the water ski area. I'm sure everybody's familiar with that. It is interesting. I live within a few miles of the property. I've probably passed by it 150 times. And you can't see the house, my client's house, from the road. And it's also unique because there are really no adjoining property owners. The lake is owned by a corporation. It's bordered by O&R Road, by 208, by 17. So it is really unique in that there are no homeowners anywhere near the property. And of course, it's this board's job to determine if there are going to be any adverse consequences due to the application. So, having said that, of course, the property is unique. Once you're on the property, it's very secluded. You don't see any other properties, no other homes, and no one can see this property. So there are 3 variances that we're looking for with respect to the shed. The building inspector has determined that because it's a lot that abuts a lakefront, that a 50-foot setback is required. In this case, based upon the plans, we'd be seeking a 20-foot variance for the shed. And with respect to the pavilion itself is designed to sit near the lake. It's an open pavilion, it does have a roof, but it's an open pavilion. And again, because it adjoins the lake, there's a 50-foot required setback, and we're proposing to put the pavilion within 10 feet of the lakefront. There's also, with respect to the pavilion, a rear yard line variance. There's a 5-foot required setback, and we're looking for a 0-foot setback. So again, at the risk of repeating myself, this board has to apply its factors. It has to determine, balance whether there's going to be an undesirable change produced in the character of the neighborhood. And I think for the reasons that I've just indicated, you can understand that it's certainly our position that it won't produce any undesirable changes. In essence, this property is pretty much its own neighborhood. So it won't have any environmental, won't have any aesthetic impacts on any other property owners.
Is this an accurate depiction of where the proposed buildings are going to be?
Yes,
So the shed, the storage shed is over on the left,
yes.
and is there an old shed there, or there's a pad for it?
That's the pad, that's the old pad,
Oh, okay.
and the shed's going to be back.
There was a shed on that pad for many years that I didn't get a permit for because I didn't realize I had to get a permit. That shed is now pushed back. You can see it's further back to the left. So I moved that last year, or the year before, further back from the lake.
Now, what's going on over here by the pavilion where it says proposed 5 to 7 foot boundary change to allow for a 5-foot offset of shed pavilion? How do you do a boundary change?
The boundary change is not an issue that we're going to address right now. That's a note on this map. The reason we produced the map is because it is the clearest representation that we have. But that's not an issue for the board.
Kind of is, because we're talking about setbacks from property lines and lakes. And I think that's the piece that you seem to be missing here. You're saying this, and I'm familiar with the property, I know where it is, and it's a beautiful house and a nice piece of property there. And it is isolated from other homes, it's surrounded by highways, but what it's not isolated from is from the view shed of that lake that adjoins it on the back side. And there is an allowance for, creating lake frontage for your property. You already have a dock out there, and that's certainly allowed within the code. But the 50-foot setback from streams, lakes, or watercourses is for the preservation of the environmental aspects of the, of the character of the neighborhood. And, although you're saying, well, there's nobody that lives back there, it is still part of the view shed of anybody that's on the lake. When you start taking trees down and opening up the back to expose area for you to put in your new gazebo and shed, well, that's an impact. And that's one of the lines that's missing from this map that really needs to be on here, is that 50-foot setback, because that line is what we're here discussing. So, this is a nicely put together package for the application, but where you seem to be lacking is on a good quality map.
Well, I can certainly provide that to the board. You're not taking down any trees for the shed. And Mr. Chairman, there are not going to be any trees removed for the placement of the shed.
Excuse me?
There won't be any trees removed for the placement of the shed.
Well, I don't know that by looking at this map, because there is that lack of information. And this looks like it was a recently prepared map, 2/20.
It was recently prepared, but it wasn't prepared for this reason.
All right, so what you have to do is go back to your surveyor and have him update this map to make it legitimate. Because when this board acts on a variance for lot lines or setbacks, we like to have a signed subdivision plan. And the minute you modify a plan that's prepared by a licensed architect, engineer, or land surveyor, you've made that map null and void. That's not a legal document. And we're very particular about that on this board. And being this is a new survey, I mean, he has all the ground information. This is a matter of updating the drawings with some additional information. And that, you know, I think at the very least, we need to see that, is an update. I mean, because you went through a nice recitation here on how, you know, this meets the 5 factors for zoning code compliance and why it's not an impact to the neighborhood. And that was nice of you to provide that. We may come to a different conclusion than you do, but, you know, if we're going to go further with this application, we really need to see that updated map.
Sure, and Mr. Chairman, don't think we're trying to change the map. I mean, that was just a depiction, right? We have, as you say, we have a prepared map. We can modify it to show whatever detail you need. And I can get the board a full-size map.
Right, generally, we ask applicants that come in here with new maps is to provide bulk zoning tables showing, you know, all the setback requirements that are on the site, the existing setbacks as provided, whether they be front, side, rear yard setbacks, and then the proposed setbacks so that we know what the variances are. So that's just, you know, I guess the impervious area or lot coverage requirement on this is probably easily being met because it is such a large lot and there's so little development on it.
Can you zoom around on that map there, Mr. Chairman, where the proposed pavilion is? I guess there's a current brick patio there that's going to be the proposed pavilion with the roof?
Correct.
There's a current pad for a shed.
Pardon?
There's a current pad for a shed.
There is next,
Yeah.
next to where the shed.
That's where, okay.
That's
So can that be zoomed there? Because
I'm only
just,
asking because I want to, if I were to make a site visit, I can kind of see where things are going, that's all. And the other has a dock, so that's pretty easy.
Very easy.
Sure, and we would welcome actually a site visit by the board members.
What's the-
You can get
I
Site
just saw
number
the
there.
document was signed, so.
you see they have the distance, the offset to that patio? Right to the right of the, to the proposed shed. I can't read it.
Yeah, I think that's an offset distance to the house.
No, over, right
Oh,
there.
right there?
Yeah, what's that? What's that?
That's offset. I'm actually building a pool.
Oh, okay.
That's the offset to the pool.
What, and what is that? What does it read, the
20
offset?
feet,
Excuse me?
20 feet.
20 feet.
I'm sorry.
I think your pool might be part of this equation also. I mean, because
I already have a permit for that.
you did.
Okay.
It's already built.
Not in the building department's letter, as it wouldn't be if he's already issued a permit on it. But what does the code say?
Is that, the house is, it's like a brown kind of chalet kind of,
Yeah, it's an A-frame with the
A-frame,
cedar
yeah.
shake siding.
and the lakes in front, are they public lakes?
No, yeah, it's a privately owned, both of the lakes are privately owned, and I'm one of the owners.
You're one of the owners? Oh, okay. Because this used to be where they did all the water skiing.
They
Yeah,
still do.
got
they
it.
still
Oh,
do.
That's beautiful.
Somebody who's out there water skiing this afternoon.
Yeah.
In the description in your package, you know, and it's good where you address all the 5 questions and you talk about the shed and I think you called the pavilion an entertainment pavilion, I think is the word.
Yes,
Can you,
it's an open.
entertainment and what type of, what,
It has a fireplace, an outdoor fireplace with a patio. sorry. It will cover an outdoor patio. It's open, right on all sides. It does have a roof, but it's an open pavilion that you commonly see styles in Home Depot and Lowe's. That's similar style.
And just so you know, it's for private use. I'm not gonna,
Yeah, no.
I'm just, reading the code out of the building department's letter of denial, and it's section 5743, lots abutting a lake or stream. A building setback line is hereby established in all districts parallel to and 50 feet distance from present normal shoreline or bank of every lake or other body of water, ever flowing water course or stream in the town. No main building or accessory building shall be constructed between the said setback line and the said shoreline or bank. The location of said shoreline or bank shall be determined by the town engineer on the basis of a period of normal water level. So, yeah, to your point earlier about the pool is not restricted based on that code. It's just buildings. So that's why you're here for the buildings.
And I did, in a footnote, we did make that disclosure, and I did contact the town engineer to introduce the thought that this board may need that calculation, and to try to find out how that would happen, and to work that in with the process.
For his determination.
Correct,
Fine.
correct.
Yeah, I think he's probably going to want to see a survey map of that, showing the shoreline. I don't know if he does a site visit in order to confirm that he concurs with the shoreline as shown on the survey map.
I don't know if we would have a survey map showing the shoreline itself.
But that's the issue. You're
Right.
back from the lake shore. So not only do we need to see your property line, but we need to, because if the lake went halfway into your property, we're still talking about a shoreline that needs to be surveyed, and establish that 50-foot setback. And it's from a lake, a stream, water course.
I believe the dotted lines that you see on there was the surveyor's estimate of the shoreline.
Right, and these are all matters for clarification by on the survey map. We have to see what is truly going on there. Because I don't see the dotted line you're referring to. I see contour lines. I don't see anything here that's specifically called out.
I think there's a note on there somewhere, but I'm not 100% sure. But did you see that dotted line that's kind of out in front all along there? That one? Yeah.
On our little maps, I don't see a scale or anything indicating what those lines, so maybe on that bigger one there is something, but on the maps here in the package, I don't see that.
Maybe that.
Yes, sir.
In the prior exhibit, there's an Exhibit C. I don't know if the shoreline is depicted there, but maybe that's part of the same exhibit.
Right, so we just need clarification. Mapping of the shoreline, the bulk lot table. Oh, actually, he does have one here. This would be helpful to have a hard copy of, because these are illegible, these maps that are in the package. Once you scale them down so much, you can't even read them. Our first order of business with each applicant is to make sure that their application is complete before, we
Do you think I have this map in the PDF?
introductory letter, application, notice of refusal from the building inspector, and a drawing to scale or survey showing present and proposed conditions if relief is granted. So that's the drawing that we need to see in, real life, not just a condensed version of it, and, certainly nothing that has been modified. We want a clean drawing from the surveyor with all the information. He's going to have to call out the shoreline because they're even looking at the full map, there's nothing that really calls out which line is the shoreline. I'm not seeing it. I don't see a legend on this map calling out any of the line types. And the 50-foot setback line from the shoreline. That's important for our discussions.
Sure, the existing setbacks, the proposed setbacks, the shoreline.
50, and the 50-foot setback, because that's like showing the building envelope. Where can you be? The same way you would show the side yard setbacks, front yard setbacks. You create the building envelope. Part of that building envelope for this lot, because it fronts on the lake, is that 50-foot setback from the shoreline. And that's what this whole application is about, so we need to see that on this drawing.
Understood. Would the board consider scheduling a public hearing and allowing us to provide that in the interim? I don't know if it's, because then it's going to go into October, and I'm sure Mr. Adams would like to get started on his construction.
Then we end up in the same position we are with the other one, where if we don't have it in time to review it, and, we open the public hearing.
Right, that was Mr. McCartney's advice the last time, and if the board is willing to do that, we will get that map to you as soon as we can.
Before we go that far down the
Sure.
road, does anybody else have any questions? Pete?
No.
You good?
I guess I just have a question with you read through it where the pool, it doesn't have to fall within that 50-foot offset of the shoreline?
No, because unfortunately, the code only talks about buildings.
Right.
It doesn't talk about pools or landscaping or patios,
Okay.
which may just be a shortcoming of the definition. But it is what it is. That's how it reads
Yeah,
in
no,
the code.
that was the only question, and that's why I was asking to zoom around that, because you could tell that it wasn't 50 foot, and that would be the only question that I see besides what you've pointed out to this point.
That's one thing, though. Our building inspector is pretty good about making his referrals to this board. He always goes back to the code and cites exactly, this is the, section of code that they're not in compliance with. And that was helpful tonight because we were able to read that section and see that it does not apply to the pool.
Clarify, for a site visit, we can show up unannounced? I would like to see it
You could have my cell number,
not
just let me
visible
know
from
you're
the
going
road.
to come.
I'm sorry, say again?
You could have my cell number and just let me know you're going to come.
Okay.
201-522.
Yeah, you'll be getting all kinds of stray phone
We're on
calls.
TV.
I'll have you write it down.
Finally reach you concerning your car's extended warranty that way.
Yes.
I just got 2 of those today.
We have a mother living at the house, and I don't want her to get frightened if you guys were to show up.
Understandable.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
that's why I'm
understandable.
asking. I don't want to, some people just say come unannounced, some people don't. And because this isn't very visible from a drive-by, I'd like to take a look at it, that's all.
You can always swim the lake, Kevin.
Actually, I might be able to walk it right
No,
now.
you'd have to come down my driveway to
Yeah,
see
no,
anything.
yeah. Typically, site visits can be done from the car, often.
Okay, while we're talking about this application, is the property within 500 feet of any of the following? The boundary of any existing or proposed county or state park or other recreation area? right-of-way of an existing or proposed county or state parkway, throughway, expressway, or road or highway. And that one is checked yes. So this has to go to Orange County Planning Department for GML review.
Right.
Land. Yeah, that would be helpful to have a contact phone number, because I don't like to enter properties without letting the homeowner know. Usually when I do a site visit, if I can see enough from the roadway, I end it there. But this one is unique.
Well, we can just provide it to the clerk tonight, or if you want
Yeah.
it in an email, we can
And
send an email.
Noreen can provide it to us.
Okay.
Just remember, if you do end up coordinating by any chance to go there, you cannot go there with a quorum.
Right.
So,
No more than 2 at a time.
right.
Unless Dave comes and supervises, then it would be okay.
No, we actually we have to advertise it as a meeting.
Yeah, after we've done it, and it fully advertised as a meeting.
Yeah, it could be done that way.
All right, so no other questions?
Well, I do have one, and that would be about how we go about scheduling the town engineer to view the property.
Have you spoken to him yet?
I did. I spoke with Mr. Arnott about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I explained to him what the code read. I sent him a copy of the application. I haven't heard back from him yet.
I would think he's going to need a full-scale map, copy of the map to use in the field.
That would be best, I'm sure.
And that map should have that shoreline called out on it, so that, he's not out there looking at something that doesn't have a shoreline and trying to guess where that line may be.
So I'll follow up with Mr. Arnott about that issue. We'll start with the map. Once we have that ready, I'll get that to him, I'll get that to the board, and we'll go from there as far as the inspection is concerned.
A lot of things we need back. I think if we schedule the public, little chance we'll close it. What's the board's?
I agree with you. I don't see how we would close a public meeting next week, next meeting.
Looking for an updated map, and then the opinion of the town engineer on whether he agrees with the shoreline representation on that map. I think that's all we were looking for.
And what do you need from the county?
The county,
no.
It's just a-
239M review.
yeah. Noreen will submit a copy of your application to the county. They'll look at it. They'll say this is open for local determination, and that'll probably be the end of it. Although, given it is surrounded by so many state highways, they may have an opinion.
Understood. I guess the only thing I would ask the board is to consider, if we could not complete what we needed to complete, and you were inclined to keep the public hearing open at the next meeting, at least we had the chance of complying and get you what you needed, so that this may not go into October, because of course my client would like to construct the pavilion and use it, if he could, this season. That would really just push it off into next year. So that's just for the board's consideration.
We'll do what we can to move this along, but unless we have all the right paperwork in hand, we can't
Yes.
close that public hearing.
Understood, of course.
Okay, so would anybody like to make a motion to schedule this matter for a public hearing on September 28th at 7:30 or shortly thereafter?
Make a motion to set this for a public hearing on September 28th.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And you have your list of to-do items straight?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I'll work with the clerk. Do you provide me with something to post? or
Yep,
do
I'll
I
get you a
provide-
letter and I'll get you the, well, you have no neighbors, so I don't think I'll be sending you. But I'll get it from the assessor's office and then I will email it to you for what you have to send in.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, have a good night.
Thank you.
Matter we have on the agenda is the approval of minutes from several months. We have the February 23rd, 2020, 2021 minutes, the March 23rd, 2021 minutes, and the April 27th, 2021 minutes to review.
I already read through them, so that's why I'm not reading them. Seemed to my best recollection to be accurate, but it's February and March.
February, March, and April.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't at the April. Oh, yeah.
It is hot in here.
Still uncomfortable?
Anybody cares?
Nobody cares.
Anybody cares?
Get
out there.
Oh. On the April meetings, minutes, Peter wasn't here. I who were there. Still approve them.
No, that'll have to wait.
Marcy comes back.
I want you to wait for.
All right, so Kevin and Peter, it's just the three of us looking at the February and March minutes. We'll have to do separate resolutions on both, or? Okay. So starting with the minutes, has everybody read the minutes?
Yes.
Accurately reflect what your recollection of the meeting was?
Yes.
That's regulation, yes.
Yes. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from the February ZBA meeting.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Oh, abstain. Before my time.
And so we move on to the next month, which is March 23rd of 2021. Has everybody reviewed the minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you find them to be in keeping with your recollection?
Yes.
Yes.
Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from March
March 23rd.
21.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So carried.
Abstain. No, thank you.
Okay. And so the April minutes will have to wait for next month when Marcy is in. Okay. So that concludes our business for tonight. Now, one last motion. Would anybody like to make a motion
Hey,
to?
Mike, could I just take a minute?
Oh, sure.
Just wanted to let everybody know that I've sold my house, and I am closing in September. So as far as I understand, I'm going to have to officially resign from the board. It's been, I don't know, 2.5, 3 years maybe. More. I mean, I enjoyed it. I think this board represented the town of Monroe and its citizens in a very professional manner. I think we faced some interesting cases, particularly the Verizon cell tower. But we had several others that I thought we did a very good job on. And, I'd like to thank you, Mike, Chairman, for your leadership. I come to this as a layperson. Your expertise engineering-wise, the planning board, Austin's expertise was just crucial. Kevin being, in the business of the home inspection side understands how that works. I didn't get to really meet Chip and Marcy, but I'm no doubt that you guys are going to carry it forward. Dave, thank you for keeping us on the legal straight. George, thanks for recording us. And most of all, Noreen, thank you for all the work you've done. It's been bittersweet. It's a bittersweet thing. I'm 34 years in Monroe, raised all my kids. They went through the school system, and, just had a tremendous experience in Monroe. So I'll miss all you guys.
Well, Peter, just glad I had the opportunity to meet you 3 years ago through the ZBA. I didn't realize you've been here for 34 years, but I'm glad we had the last 3 years to get to know one another. And I appreciate the effort you put in on the planning board. Although you may not have a similar professional background to the topics that we cover, you're always spot on with your questions. And, always give deliberate thought to every application that's been in front of us. You've been a real asset to the board.
Thank you.
So thank you for your years of service.
So I'm going to make David, go.
I just would echo that, everything Mike said. I couldn't have said it any better. You've been a huge asset to the board. And again, you've been on point. You've driven the right issues at the right time. And you're going to have some pretty big shoes to fill on this board to replace you.
I'm sure they'll do it. I think we do have another alternate coming, correct?
Yes, we do.
So we can have a full board. And that's that. Thanks, guys.
Be missed.
Yeah. So can I adjourn the final meeting?
Absolutely.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Meeting adjourned. Thank you, George.
Thanks, George.